We gotta remain positive, okay?
Welcome, everyone. Is the mic working okay? How's this? Okay. So for those who are reading, you're going to have to hold it up close. Thank you all for being here today. Before we begin, there's always a few announcements. Are there any empty seats left? If people come in late, raise your hand if you have an empty seat next to you. There's a couple up in the front row. Which okay, also a few messages from Nancy. As you can imagine, Ruth had quite a few books and they're out in the lobby. Take as many as you want. Bags are provided. And also lunch will be served immediately after the service and all are invited. That will be in Campus Center, room 120 on the lower level. One of the items on the menu is chicken soup with matzo balls, because this was the only dish that Ruth would eat towards the end of her life. Plus, she says, Chef Alex makes really good matzo balls. And there are also sandwiches and fruit, so we hope you'll join us. And regarding the service, it's all in the program, including the words to the hymns are in the insert. I'm sure you've discovered that already. And there's just one change. Ruth's former student, Jeannie Wood, could not make it today. So Liesl Higgins, class of 1994, will be speaking in her place. Thank you, Liesl. So let's just take a moment to quiet ourselves as we begin. We are here to remember our beloved colleague, professor, family member, and friend, Ruth Wahlstrom. There is so much to remember. I'm sure. A few things that are her matter-of-fact ways, her absolute clarity in speaking and writing, and her zest for life. Whether it was a passage from Shakespeare or a good wine, whether it was a good basketball game or a date with a special kitty, Ruth knew how to savor the ordinary of life. I have to admit, her of the English language intimidated me. And even when sending the most mundane email, I always made numerous revisions before pushing send. Ruth always called us to be our best selves. So now, let us celebrate together the gift that her life was to us.
A reading from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
Isn't it frightening when someone brings a folder to the podium? So many kind faces, so many old friends. Good morning. I'm Bill Ryer. I hope I may be pardoned if my reflections on Ruth Wahlstrom are delivered with a gentle fragrance of hero worship. In short, Ruth was a gem, and we all know that great gems have many wonderful facets. Permit me to share several facets of Ruth's brilliance. Facet 1, Ruth the Minnesotan. Ruth's life was rings of the great American story. Born to the Wahlstrom family, she and her brothers Paul and Glenn grew up on the family farm near Canby, Minnesota, actually just 8 miles from the South Dakota state line. I recall her mentioning helping her mother Nellie cook for the threshing crews during harvest time, which will be starting soon in Minnesota. I remember her too laughingly recalling not having indoor plumbing. Her father, John, from motives of privacy and propriety, situated the outhouse behind a hedge of lilacs. A very gifted youngster, Ruth attended a one-room schoolhouse. She was a very bright child, and after several years was teaching the younger students, while her elder teacher took care of the oldest. Ruth has been teaching ever since. Ruth, the adventurer, facet 2. Ruth was a world traveler in her wide reading, but also in her far-flung excursions. A gathering of her friends counted the nations and named them, and we came up with 20. Of special interest is the trip Ruth and several other intrepid faculty took to Cuba. Iceland was another notable destination. In what was a Heidelberg tradition, Ruth experienced a teaching foray in China. One summer, Ruth and the entire full-time English department taught in Tianjin Normal University together, sharing a very broadening experience. During her sabbatical of 1991, Ruth went to Shin Yokohama, Japan, where she aided Japanese students transferring here to the home Tiffin campus in an Heidelberg International Outreach Program. It was a wonderful year for me too. Ruth, the note taker, a very special facet. If you ever sat next to Ruth at a concert, play, or lecture, you would see her multitasking. She would be enjoying the performance, of course, but she would also be taking exhaustive notes. This was true at her beloved Stratford Shakespeare Festival, as well as the Ritz Theater, and certainly at most of the student productions that occurred in Gundlach Theater. At times, she would put these notes to good use. After comedian Joan Rivers appeared at the Ritz, Ruth amazed us upstairs in flight of her, quoting some of the jokes she had told. Some were rather coarse in content. When one of us asked how she could use foul language, Ruth simply said, "I was quoting an artist at work." Shakespeare could be off color too. And she's right. Ruth, the role model, an enduring facet. For both faculty and students, particularly women students, Ruth was a model of professionalism, diligence, and generosity. Ruth's wonderful work ethic in preparing her class sessions and evaluating student work made me want to become a better instructor as well. One English major alumna marveled at Ruth's, quote, razor sharp wit and intellect, and her ability to get 20-somethings enraptured by Beowulf. Ruth, the editor, a generous facet. On a professional and public service level, many benefited from Ruth's precision in matters of diction, grammar, and punctuation. I know that she reviewed Nancy's minutes for the Tiffin Historic Trust, and many a time she provided improvement for my minutes when I served as the secretary to the monthly faculty meeting here, probably in this room even. I doubt I would be the poet I am without Ruth's influence. As Nancy can testify, Ruth read and commented on hundreds of poems over the years. 4 collections I have brought together were all edited by her. And this is based, this assistance, simply on Ruth's generous heart. In closing, for me, the news of Ruth's passing was very difficult to absorb. Even now, I lean on the Zen Buddhist value of grateful acceptance to come to my aid. When I first heard of this loss, I sat on our front porch on a beautiful June evening. The beauty of the moonrise, combined with this loss, came together in this haiku. Above the pine bough, waning moon in the June mist, my sorrow is too deep. I'm filled with gratitude to have shared many experiences with a human being who, to me, was an older sister. Like me, many of you will have much to celebrate as you recall the importance of Ruth Wahlstrom in your lives. In concluding, may I share a poem with you? Ruth commented that this brief poem was among her favorites of mine. I remember her noting that it is a poem based on wordplay. Based on wordplay, but wordplay of a serious kind in the service of art and thought. Ruth also said she prized this poem because of its lilting rhythm and its basic, simple truth. I think you have it in the program. A prayer for Ruth Wahlstrom. I hope my life will leave hope in its wake, so those who follow will wake in hope, not at the wake of the world, but wide awake to a world where hope will follow hope and leaves will follow as I leave the world to wake among leaves in a garden. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Vicki and Renee. That was just beautiful. Some people have asked whether Dr. Ruth Wahlstrom and I knew each other when we came to work at Heidelberg. And the answer is no. We met as young colleagues, she in the English department, and I as the reference librarian in Beagley Library. We became friends and decided to rent a house together. We got along well. We agreed it was because we were both the youngest sister to two older brothers. Sorry, Michael, wherever you are. And some years later, we bought a house and then another, and we had a couple cats along the way. On learning that Dr. Wahlstrom passed away on alumni weekend, so many of you immediately commented on having her as your professor, noting her kindness and interest in you and in your achieving success. Yes, her exams were hard and long, but she accommodated your needs. How many times did she plan an extra little half hour for you somewhere? As her good friend, I knew that her students enjoyed her classes, but I didn't fully realize the extent of the impact that her teaching had on so many of you. Your being here this morning confirms this, and it confirms your great regard for Ruth. Our friend Dr. Bonnie Forrs once summed up Ruth, saying that Ruth never met anyone she didn't like and never said an unkind word about anyone, although I know she did roll her eyes occasionally. She was extremely tolerant of her friends' flaws and especially of mine. All the reasons you loved her and her classes applied to me as her friend, except that I didn't have to take those exams or be graded. She did, however, as Dr. Ryer just mentioned, frequently help me revise my own writing. And I wish she were here today because this may be going on too long. So she probably would have helped me cut it down a bit. On the commendation photo that was presented to Dr. Wahlstrom on her retirement in 2013, and that is back by Dr. Isaacson back there, she was quoted as saying she anticipated her future would include travel and lots of pleasure reading. She did get to travel. We took 2 Viking cruises, a trip to Iceland with Dr. Amy Berger, as Dr. Ryer mentioned, accompanied the Heidelberg Concert Choir in 2019 on their European tour. And more recently, we went on several regional tours in the US with our local senior center. And I am already missing her as my travel companion. Okay, I don't know what we did, guys, but okay. What came as a surprise was that of the 3 book clubs that she belonged to, her favorite was Seneca's Sleuths, a mystery book group headed by Dr. Susan Carty. Another surprise was that Ruth, who while teaching watched very little television, and what she watched was mostly, no surprise, Masterpiece Theater and PBS specials. In retirement, she developed a passion for medical dramas and NCIS, all of them. She continued her love of watching the Minnesota Vikings and Twins, but now went beyond, encompassing several other sports. In addition to the annual trips to the Stratford and Shaw festivals in Canada, Ruth enjoyed attending the Broadway shows and drama productions in Cleveland, providing an opportunity to see some of the plays included in her collection of theater scripts, a few of which, and truly it's just a few, are on display in the lobby for you to take. Some of you were the lucky recipients of Ruth's newsy correspondence or of her carefully selected paper or online greeting cards. It wasn't unusual for Ruth to laugh out loud in the greeting card aisle when she found an especially appropriate and funny card. She also astonished her friends and family with the amount of news she could fit on a souvenir postcard. COVID brought online author interviews and Zoom sessions. Her enthusiasm for Garrison Keillor's humor and insights extended to her following several of his online ruminations. Ruth also enjoyed the Canadian mystery author Louise Penny and looked forward to her monthly newsletters. Ruth said that her mother taught her domestic skills just in case that teaching job didn't work out for her. Although she did not need to go into service to make her living, Ruth did rather enjoy doing laundry, which I was very appreciative of because it's not one of my favorite tasks. She also made very tasty pies and inspired my own niece to take on the challenge of pie baking. And I think Lindsay has actually surpassed Ruth, but we won't tell Ruth that. After Ruth passed away, I came across a signed volume by an Ohio poet, Maggie Smith, entitled Keep Moving, Notes on Loss, Creativity, and Change. Its first section was titled Revision. And I thought, aha, this must be something for Ruth. Smith wrote, to revise means literally to look at again, to re-envision. She states, revision has always been my favorite part of writing. I know some writers love the rush and the new idea, the getting it down. But for me, the problem solving is what I love most, the challenge posed by the not right words in the not right order. Smith continued, when I revise a piece of writing, I tend to whittle rather than expand as I go. The more time I spend with it, the smaller it gets, as I try to be as concise as possible. But Smith warns the writer, if you're not careful, you can scrub all the weirdness and wildness right out of your writing. As counterintuitive as it sounds, you can polish it dull. She admonishes, the same applies to our lives. If we're not careful, we can revise the life right out of them. We can polish our lives dull. As much as she enjoyed editing and revising, Dr. Wahlstrom would encourage you to follow Maggie Smith's advice to re-envision, but not polish your lives dull. And I want to thank all of you for coming this morning to share our celebration of the life of Dr. Ruth Wahlstrom. And we now have her nephew, Stacy is coming.
Disclaimer, I'm an electrical engineer, not an English professor. I think that fact will become obvious as I read on. My name is Stacy Wahlstrom, and I'm one of Ruth's nephews. My dad was Ruth's oldest brother, Paul. Most of you, Ruth was Dr. Wahlstrom or Dr. Ruth. To her family, she was simply Aunt Ruth. First, I want to share a couple thoughts from my youngest daughter, Dr. Krista Wahlstrom. She couldn't be here today. Ruth and I engaged emails frequently when I was pursuing my PhD in neuroscience. She would check in on me every month or so to make sure I was still surviving. It meant a lot to me to be able to talk with another woman who pursued a PhD in what I'm sure was also a very male-dominated field. It's important to have that kind of representation and see people that look like you doing difficult things like getting a PhD. Her emails are partially what got me through my time at the University of Iowa. And I'm so grateful to have shared those exchanges with her. Like everyone in our family, I looked forward to her birthday cards every year. Ruth's the only person in my life that never, ever forgot my birthday. She used to send very personalized cards in the mail up until a few years ago when she started sending these hilarious e-cards. My favorite was the one she sent last year with Dolly Parton dancing around and singing my name. Even I, Krista's own father, have forgotten her birthday once or twice. Speaking of Aunt Ruth's birthday cards, the only time she got mine wrong was 2 years ago when I was turning 59 and she sent me a happy 60th birthday. She felt terrible when she discovered her mistake. Aunt Ruth was very generous with my family growing up. It seemed like every time she came home to visit Minnesota, she would give my brother and I some swag from the Heidelberg bookstore. And it wouldn't even be Christmas or our birthdays. Typically, it would be clothing items. My brother and I ended up attending college at South Dakota State, where we, of course, wore a lot of our Heidelberg apparel. I can't count how many times on campus I was asked, where's Heidelberg University? Is that in Germany? To which I would reply, no, it's in Tiffin, Ohio. To which they would ask, well, where's that? At which point it didn't matter what I replied, as it seemed nobody in South Dakota knew much about the geography of Ohio. In 1978, when my older brother was about to turn 16, what did Aunt Ruth do? She gave us her 67 Ford Mustang. We both learned to drive and took our driver's test in that Mustang. My parents didn't have means to buy a second car, so honestly, I don't think we could have ever passed the road test in my dad's 65 Pontiac Catalina. No power steering, size of a boat, drove like a tank. That 67 Mustang got both my brother and I through college. And I think it was about 2 years after I graduated when the car finally did die. I've owned 3 different Mustangs since then. And Aunt Ruth's generosity never stopped. About the time my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and was having trouble walking outdoors, she bought him a riding lawnmower. There's a picture somewhere of Ruth sitting on that mower in our front yard, but true to Ruth's fashion, she refused to drive it. Today, this mower is still being used in my yard in Canby, Minnesota. On some of Aunt Ruth's visits back home, she would expose my brother and I to some culture. Since Canby, Minnesota isn't exactly New York City, this took the form of movies or plays. I remember Ruth taking us to see the animated movie Charlotte's Web when I was 8. However, when my mom found out Ruth's intentions, she got very upset and told us she could not take us to that horrible horror movie. Ruth was quite perplexed. Long story short, my mom was thinking of the old 1964 Bette Davis thriller, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. Culture. When I was 14, Aunt Ruth took my brother and I to the movie version of the Broadway musical Hair. Mom reluctantly let us go, as it was clear she did not approve of the movie's anti-war and rebellion themes. Finally, regarding culture, one summer Aunt Ruth took us all the way to Pipestone, Minnesota, a 1-hour drive, to see the live outdoor performance of the Hiawatha pageant. This was the enactment of Longfellow's epic Song of Hiawatha. And that show had a run in Pipestone before closing of 60 years. Isn't it a bit funny that even though I've lived in 10 different states, 10 different houses spanning 4 states, that I now live in Minneapolis, right next to Lake Nokomis and Lake Hiawatha? I'd say my Aunt Ruth had a strong influence on my life. Thank you.
My name is Liesl Klaber Higgins, and I graduated in the class of 1994, and I was a music and English major. And so last night, when I learned that there was an opportunity to speak about Dr. Wahlstrom, I figured, why have one voice when you could have 2? And so I texted my fellow classmate to be up here with me. And so we're going to share just a little bit of the conversation that we had last night, and I will let my friend introduce herself.
My name is Jen Garbrick, maiden name Garvin, and I was a class of 95, and we did we edited the Morpheus together and did all the amazing English major stuff.
Very good. As we were talking, and I do want to honor the words of Jeannie, and we will enter her words into our conversation. As we were reflecting, I said, did Dr. Wahlstrom ever give you permission to call her by her first name?
I'm not really sure whether she did, probably, but I can't. I don't know about you.
My husband, Dan, says that there's a story where shortly after graduation, at some point, Dr. Wahlstrom said, now, Liesl, you can call me by my first name. And I said, okay, Dr. Wahlstrom. So it is refreshing to hear that apparently she has a first name that's not doctor. So as we were having this conversation, why don't you explain what you have here?
All right. The Riverside Shakespeare the American Heritage College Dictionary, 3rd edition, and both volumes of the Norton Anthology of English Literature, because I couldn't really come up the stairs of Flatiron without textbooks in my hands. So
And how appropriate that we can actually take more books home with us. Now, I'm remembering Dr. Wahlstrom carrying those books in not one, but 2 tote bags. Am I correct that this would be the stance that you would see her in? Right, because as you can tell, these are not small books. What were some of the things that we chatted about last night regarding how we remember Dr. Wahlstrom and the impact she had on us?
the word that Sister Margaret used of matter of fact, I think is the word I was looking for last night. When I heard that Dr. Wahlstrom passed away, I was stunned that she tolerated that. Like she had things to do. She, to bring that, and I think matter of fact was because I didn't want it to sound like, oh, I don't got time for that or anything, but just that, no, I don't think so. And just the, like Dr. Ryer said, holding the excellence up for everybody, not in a militant, cold way, but just you came in there and you were expected to be excellent and work hard. And that has continued in the rest of my life.
There you go. Jeannie writes of her time at Heidelberg as maybe being a student that needed to kind of find her way, and how Dr. Wahlstrom was so patient and kind and encouraging to that. Jeannie says that she was not necessarily an excellent student, but became excellent, I think, under Dr. Wahlstrom's tutelage. When I graduated from college, I anticipated that my next step was to go to seminary. And so one of the people that I asked for a letter of reference from was Dr. Wahlstrom. Well, God and life had other plans. And I am reminded of the last time that I saw Dr. Wahlstrom, and I believe, Nancy, you were there. I want to say that I happened to be at the coffee shop downtown, and I could be making this up, but I know that I saw them, and they were there, and Dr. Wahlstrom said, "So Liesl, what's new?" And I said, "Well, I'm in seminary." She said, and it was not like she wasn't pretending. She actually remembered that had been where I was headed, and she was so encouraging about that. I want to give you an opportunity to say anything else because I have one story that I do want to share.
The only other thing I was laughing about last night as I was thinking was those terrible, terrible desks in the classrooms over there that were like they were barely this wide, and you had to have your book and your notebook and, so it was tough times back in the 90s,
Exactly. Well, Jeannie writes that about Dr. Wahlstrom, and it's interesting because at no point in any of these reflections does Jeannie refer to Dr. Wahlstrom by her first name. So it's not just us. I think, how many of you former students felt ever comfortable to call her by her first name? You can raise your hand. Yeah, I see heads shaking like, no. Yeah, a couple of you, right. Jeannie writes, she had this little sparkle in her eye when she was being a bit cheeky, and a confidence that came from doing what she truly loved. It was empowering just to see her in her element. And while she had a way of making me feel special, I know she did the same for hundreds, if not thousands, of students over her career. Her legacy lives on in all of us, and because she influenced so many lives, we're all carrying a piece of her forward in our own way. If the world had more women like her, it would be a better place. And I am reminded of another woman named Ruth from Hebrew scriptures, who traveled from a land far away to make a new life and became invested in the community in which she was. And that legacy brought forth generations and generations and generations. And so the best testimony I can think of is that Dr. Wahlstrom, whose first name is Ruth. is very similar to that same woman from Hebrew scripture who traveled a far way to come and make a new life and invested in her community and made the people of this community her people and invested in countless generations, and we are all the better for it.
As we end this service, a special thank you to all who helped in any way, especially to our musicians for providing us with such beautiful music, for everyone who shared memories of Ruth, for everyone who came, for all those who worked behind the scenes. Thank you. The service is coming to an end, but the many ways that Ruth touched our hearts will continue to shine, brightening our own. And so we end by praying a prayer for Ruth entitled Prayer for a Soul Journeying to the Infinite. May it be our God and God of our ancestors, that you guide the soul of Ruth, our beloved, in peace and in mercy, upon a path of love and light, to the shelter of the infinite presence, in tranquility, in truth, and in peace. May you deliver her from fear and hindrance alone. Send forth your blessing and surround her with infinite love. Appoint your holy angels to accompany her, to guard her in grace, in kindness, and in compassion. Let our prayer be unto her a garment of light, a mantle of protection upon her sacred journey. Transform the burning ache of longing into joy for the goodness she brought into our lives. Let the sorrow of her absence be turned into thanksgiving for the days of precious life we were granted with her. May we be found worthy to walk in the light of her legacy, to continue the melody of her days with faith and with love. May we embody her generous heart, her noble spirit, her boundless devotion to those she cherished. For you are the one who hears our prayer. Blessed are you, righteous judge, who gives life and returns it, who plants seeds of redemption in the soil of sorrow. Amen.